These unpatriotic acts being perpetuated by the leadership of Nupeng and Pengasing be dealt with decisively.
When it comes to Africa, both during and after colonialism, many countries are recognized for having some of the worst leaders the world has ever seen. African dictators can be some of the richest people in the world while leading a country filled with the poorest people. These African leaders can be considered just as bad or worse, depending on your criteria. Many of these leaders come to power due to military coups, and some continued to stay in power due to corruption. Today, we will be looking at the 15 most corrupt African leaders. Before we start, be sure to subscribe and click on the bell icon for more interesting videos. Number 15. Edgar Lungu. Known for selling his country to the Chinese, Edgar Chagwa Lungu is a Zambian politician who has been the president of Zambia since January 25, 2015. He served as Minister of Justice and Minister of Defense. Lungu was elected to a full presidential term in the August 2016 election. Zambia's President Edgar Lungu takes the 15th spot on Out Countdown. There were reports saying that Lungu's presidential jet was used to smuggle money and drugs on his president's return trip from a state visit to Israel in 2017. There are allegations by the people of Zambia that the presidential trips and plane is now being used to courier drugs. The claims sparked a political firestorm in the country, with police opening an inquiry into defamation of the president. Number 14. Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma is a South African politician who served as the fourth president of South Africa from the 2009 general election until his resignation on February 14, 2018. Zuma is the 14th most corrupt African leader. He faced significant legal challenges before and during his presidency. He was charged with rape in 2005, but was acquitted. Jacob Zuma has fought a long legal battle over allegations of racketeering and corruption. Zuma's rule is estimated to have cost the South African economy approximately $83 billion. He has also been implicated in reports of state capture through his friendship with the influential Gupta family. Number 13. Paul Biya. Paul Biya is a Cameroonian politician serving as the president of Cameroon since November 6, 1982. A native of Cameroon's south, Biya rose rapidly as a bureaucrat in the 1960s. Biya's tenure as president began on November 6, 1982, making him the second longest ruling president in Africa, the longest ruling non-royal leader in the world, and the oldest head of state in Africa, at 87 years of age. Biya has been in power for over 35 years. Cameroon has enjoyed peace and stability for the past 30 years. Paul Biya's regime has also overseen one of the strongest diplomatic relations in Africa. Paul Biya has kept himself in power by organizing sham elections and paying international observers to certify them free of irregularities. Biya has been accused of constant human rights abuse and was ranked 19th in Parade magazine's top 20 list of the world's worst dictators. Number 12. Nosingbe Idema. The pioneer of Africa's first military coup d'état, Nosingbe Idema was the president of Togo from 1967 until his death in 2005. He participated in two successful military coups, in January 1963 and January 1967, and became president on April 14, 1967. As president, he created a political party, the Rally of the Togolese People, and headed an anti-communist single-party regime until the early 1990s. At the time of his death, Idema was the longest-serving ruler in Africa. According to a 2018 study, Nosingbe Idema's rule rested on repression, patronage, and a bizarre leadership cult. Till date, he remains one of Africa's longest-serving dictator. He died of a heart attack in 2005, and his son Faure was named the president of Togo in controversial circumstances. Number 11. Yahya Jammeh. Yahya Abdulaziz Jammeh is a Gambian politician and former military officer who was the leader of the Gambia from 1994 to 2017. Jammeh is accused of having stolen millions of dollars from his country to fund his life of luxury. After leaving office, his assets were frozen by many countries, and he went into exile. In addition to charges of corruption and human rights violations, he is also accused of having raped a number of young women. Yahya Jammeh is the 11th most corrupt African leader. He ruled the Gambia for 23 years. Under his rule, the Gambia experienced strong human rights abuses. He also claims to have a cure for HIV/AIDS, and his hate for homosexuality is well documented. He threatened to slit the throats of any homosexual in Gambia. Gambia's former president Yahya Jammeh orchestrated the embezzlement of nearly $1 billion of public funds and illegal timber revenue, looting the treasury in a long-running conspiracy that crippled one of the world's poorest countries. Number 10. Mobutu Sese Seko. Mobutu Sese Seko was a Congolese politician and military officer who was the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and later Zaire from 1965 to 1997. Mobutu installed the government that arranged Lumumba's execution in 1961, and continued to lead the country's armed forces until he took power directly in a second coup in 1965. During his rule, the country suffered from uncontrolled inflation, large debts, and massive currency devaluations. Ranked as one of Africa's worst leaders. During Mobutu's reign, he amassed a large personal fortune through economic exploitation and corruption, leading some to call his rule a kleptocracy. To consolidate his power, he established the Popular Movement in 1967, changed the Congo's name to Zaire in 1971, and his own name to Mobutu Sese Seko in 1972. His reign was also filled with human rights abuses. He imprisoned, torture and kill his political opponents publicly. Number 9. Charles Taylor. Charles MacArthur Gonkey Taylor is a Liberian former politician and convicted war criminal who served as the 22nd president of Liberia from August 2, 1997 until his resignation on August 11, 2003. He resigned, as a result of growing international pressure, and went into exile in Nigeria. During his term of office, Taylor was accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity as a result of his involvement in the Sierra Leone Civil War. His corruption of the treasury and industry was as bad as his human rights abuses. In May 2012, Taylor was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He was one of the few corrupt leaders on this list that resigned from power. As president, he created his own private army while reducing the size of the armed forces of Liberia. He was also believed to have accepted diamonds in exchange for weapons to support the rebels in Sierra Leone. Charles Taylor was believed to have amassed a fortune of more than $50 million despite Liberia being a desperately poor country. Number 8. Idriss Déby. Marshal Idriss Déby Itno is a Chadian politician who has been the president of Chad since 1990. He took power at the head of a rebellion against President Hissène Habré in December 1990 and has since survived various rebellions against his own rule. He won elections in 1996 and 2001, and after term limits were eliminated he won again in 2006, 2011, and 2016. Ranked as the 8th most corrupt African leader, Déby's multi-decade rule has been described as authoritarian by several international media sources. Idriss Déby put Chad on a path to economic growth with the building of an oil pipeline. However, the pipeline ended up bringing the corruption within Chad to the forefront. His regime has been characterized by human rights abuses against his opposition, and it is clear that all of the elections that have been held since he took power have been fraudulent. Coup attempts continue to come after every election, as the economic conditions of the majority of the population continues to decline. Number 7. José Eduardo dos Santos. José Eduardo dos Santos is an Angolan politician who served as president of Angola from 1979 to 2017. As president, dos Santos was also the commander-in-chief of the Angolan Armed Forces and president of the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, the party that has ruled Angola since it gained independence in 1975. Dos Santos has repeatedly stated that he will step down as president and that elections will be held, but the elections always end with him being re-elected. José Eduardo dos Santos of Angola was the second longest serving leader in Africa and is surpassed only by Teodoro Obiang Nguema, who came into power 2 months before dos Santos. During dos Santos's time in power, almost 70% of the population lived on only $2 a day while the government budget grew to $69 billion. It was also discovered that $32 billion in oil revenues just disappeared. Not only does dos Santos and his family appear to be looting from the oil revenues, but when many industries were privatized after the Angolan Civil War, he took control of many of those industries. Number 6. General Idi Amin Dada. Popularly known as the Butcher of Uganda. Idi Amin Dada was a Ugandan military officer who served as the president of Uganda from 1971 to 1979. He is considered to be one of the cruelest leaders in world history. Idi Amin Dada of Uganda first rose to prominence when he took the rank of Major General in the Ugandan army following independence. During his years in power, Amin shifted from being a pro-Western ruler enjoying considerable support from Israel to being backed by Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, Zaire's Mobutu Sese Seko, the Soviet Union, and East Germany. During Amin's rule in the late 1970s, there was increased unrest against his persecution of certain ethnic groups and political dissidents. Amin's rule was characterized by rampant human rights abuses, political repression, ethnic persecution, extrajudicial killings, nepotism, corruption, and gross economic mismanagement. International observers and human rights groups estimate that between 100,000 and 500,000 people were killed under his regime.
Uganda is not yet independent, even when the British handed over on the 9th of October 1962.
Number 5. Omar al-Bashir. Omar Hassan Ahmad al-Bashir is a Sudanese politician who served as the 7th president of Sudan from 1989 to 2019 when he was deposed in a coup d'etat. He was subsequently incarcerated, tried, and convicted on multiple corruption charges. Omar came to power in 1989 when as a brigadier general he led a group of officers in a military coup that ousted the democratically elected government. In March 2009, al-Bashir became the first sitting president to be indicted by the International Criminal Court for allegedly directing a campaign of mass killing, rape, and pillage against civilians. Omar al-Bashir is the only standing president to have arrest warrants issued against him by the International Criminal Court. His corruption goes far beyond his crimes against humanity, as he has also done a great deal of looting the state. Leaked diplomatic cables suggest that Omar al-Bashir has as much as $9 billion stashed away. Number 4. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo is an Equato-Guinean politician who has been the second president of Equatorial Guinea since August 1979. He ousted his uncle, Francisco Macias Nguema, in an August 1979 military coup. He is the second longest consecutively serving current non-royal national leader in the world. Obiang has been widely accused of corruption, abuse of power, unlawful imprisonment, and torture. Equatorial Guinea is currently a dominant party state, in which Obiang's Democratic Party of Equatorial Guinea holds virtually all governing power in the nation. The constitution provides Obiang sweeping powers, including the right to rule by decree, effectively making his government a legal dictatorship. Obiang and his cabinet get billions each year in oil revenue, but it does not translate to more public spending, but rather spending on presidential expenses. Number 3. Robert Mugabe. Robert Gabriel Mugabe was a Zimbabwean revolutionary and politician who served as Prime Minister of Zimbabwe from 1980 to 1987, and then as President from 1987 to 2017. Having dominated Zimbabwe's politics for nearly 4 decades, Mugabe was a controversial figure. Critics accused Mugabe of being a dictator responsible for economic mismanagement, anti-white racism, human rights abuses, and widespread corruption in Zimbabwe. Most of Mugabe's corruption comes from his desires to consolidate power and rig the elections so that he can stay in power indefinitely. He was elected Prime Minister in 1980, and resumed office when Zimbabwe gained its independence. As soon as he came into power, he started to consolidate it by creating a single-party state and employing a North Korean-trained security force to deal with dissidents. In December of 1987, he declared himself president and consolidated all powers of the states and gave himself the power to dissolve the parliament and declare martial law. Number 2. General Sani Abacha. General Sani Abacha was a Nigerian military general, kleptocrat, and dictator who served as the military head of state of Nigeria from 1993 until his death in 1998. Abacha was the first Nigerian soldier to attain the rank of a full military general without skipping a single rank. He obtained power through a military coup on November 17, 1993. The following year he issued a decree that gave him absolute power by placing the authority of his government over that of the courts. Sani Abacha is the second worst leader in African history. His rule saw the achievement of several economic feats and also recorded human rights abuses and several political assassinations. General Sani Abacha ruled for only 5 years, but during that time he operated a secretive and brutal regime that left Nigeria in absolute poverty. He also issued a decree that would allow him to imprison anyone for 3 months without trial. Sani Abacha is considered to be one of the most corrupt leaders in history because of the amount of money he stole from his own country. Number 1. Francisco Macias Nguema. Francisco Macias Nguema was the first president of Equatorial Guinea, from 1968 until his overthrow and subsequent execution in 1979. During his reign, nearly a third of the population was killed or exiled. Francisco Macias Nguema was the first president of Equatorial Guinea, and he created a bad example for those that would follow him. In 1964 he became deputy prime minister and he became president when he won the only free election the country has ever had since 1968. During his reign, Macias Nguema put forth decrees that bestowed all powers of the government and its institutions to him. He also declared that anyone who threatened the president or the government would be punished with death. Francisco Macias Nguema was a very paranoid man and one who would relinquish power to no one. He stayed in a hut in his ancestral village and kept all of the national treasury under his bed.
There is God. There is God.